Have you ever wondered what happens when a lion is cornered not by a hunter but by the very jackals he trusted to guard his den? Tonight, we take you to the highest, coldest, and most unforgiving battlefield on earth, a fortress of ice and rock known as the Fortress of the Sky. Up here where the air is thin and secrets are buried deep under the snow, a young soldier is about to make a choice. A choice that will either cost him his life or expose a rot so deep it threatens to bring the entire fortress crumbling down. But what he doesn't know is that his fate rests in the hands of the most unlikely person on the base, a quiet, elderly woman who serves tea in the officer's mess. A woman with hands wrinkled by age and a past sealed in shadow. Why does the formidable commandant of this fortress, a man who fears no enemy, live in quiet terror of this humble old woman? Who is she? The wind, it was a living entity. It didn't just blow, it screamed. It clawed at the stone and steel of the base, a constant, chilling reminder that nature, not man, was the true ruler of these peaks. Here, near the glaciers that stood like silent, white guards, every breath was an effort, and every day was a victory against the cold. For Bilal Ahmed, this place was the very definition of duty. He wasn't a frontline warrior, a man of the gang, but a specialist in the signals corps. His domain was the pulse of the fortress, the invisible waves of communication that connected this isolated outpost to the heart of the nation. He believed in the sanctity of that pulse. It was the lifeline for the men who patrolled the dizzying heights, the voice that could call for aid, the ear that listened for danger. Bilal was young, but his eyes held the seriousness of a man twice his age. He saw the world in clean lines of right and wrong, a binary code of honor and dishonor. And lately, the signals he was monitoring weren't on the radio, they were in the ledgers. For weeks, a gnawing unease had settled in his gut. Encrypted transceivers, night vision scopes, thermal imaging devices, equipment that was the difference between life and death in this train were being logged as damaged in transit or faulty on arrival, at an alarming rate. Yet, the supply manifests from headquarters in Rawalpindi showed perfect deliveries. He spent his nights digging his screen, casting a lonely blue glow in his small, cold quarter. And then he found it. A shadow ledger. A ghost inventory. The premium equipment was being systematically siphoned off, replaced by cheap and reliable. This wasn't just theft. It was a death sentence, packaged and delivered to his own brothers in arms. Every faulty radio, every blind night vision scope was a potential grave marker. And the signature that authorized every single fraudulent entry was that of the base commandant himself. Colonel Rashid Khan. Colonel Khan was a man carved from the mountain's granite. His reputation preceded him, a decorated officer, stern, commanding, a man who projected an aura of unshakable patriotism. He spoke of honor, of sacrifice, of the motherland, in a voice that could make the staunchest soldier stand a little straighter. To question him was to question the mountain itself. Bilal felt a cold dread wash over him, colder than the glacial wind outside. This was not some petty thief. This was the king of the fortress. To accuse him would be an act of. He could be branded a traitor, a madman, and in a place this isolated, he could simply disappear. For days, he was paralyzed by the knowledge, the weight of it crushing his chest. He looked at the faces of his comrades in the mess hall, laughing, sharing straws, oblivious to the fact that the very man meant to protect them was selling their safety for profit. In the corner of that same mess hall, a woman named Bibi moved with a quiet, practiced grace. To the soldiers, she was just the auntie who made the best chai and always had a kind, tired smile. Her back was slightly stooped from years of work, her hands were gnarled, but her eyes missed nothing. They were deep, dark pools that held a stillness, an unnerving perception that seemed to see past the uniforms and the ranks, into the very souls of the men she served. She saw the false bravado, the hidden fears, and the creeping shadows of corruption. She saw the turmoil in young Bilal's face. She had seen that look before, many times, in many other places. It was the look of a good man standing at the edge of a moral cliff. After a week of internal war, Bilal made his decision. His conscience wouldn't let him sleep. He chose to trust the system. He typed up a formal report, meticulously detailing his findings, attaching copies of the conflicting ledgers, the fraudulent signatures, everything. He sealed it in an official envelope and, with a prayer on his lips, requested a formal audience with Colonel Khan. He reasoned that perhaps the colonel was being misled, that a subordinate was forging his signature. He clung to that sliver of hope. Colonel Khan received him in his office, a space that was an extension of his own neat, adorned with maps, commendations, and a large, imposing portrait of the colonel read the report without a flicker of emotion on his face. He finished, placed the papers neatly on his desk, and looked at Bilal. The silence stretched, thick and heavy. Bilal's heart hammered against his ribs. Then, the colonel smiled. It was a cold, thin smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Ahmed," he said, his voice smooth as polished stone. "This is exemplary work. Truly. Your diligence, your attention to detail, it's a credit to this uniform." He stood up, walked around his desk, and placed a heavy hand on Bilal's shoulder. "You have brought a very serious matter to my attention. I will launch a full, internal investigation immediately. Rest assured, I will get to the bottom of this. You have done your duty." Bilal felt a wave of relief so powerful it almost buckled his knees. He had done the right thing. The system worked. "Thank you, sir," he managed to say, his voice thick with emotion. "I only want to protect our men." The colonel's grip tightened for a fraction of a second. "Of course, son. That's what we all want." As Bilal left the office, his back straight with renewed faith, Colonel Khan watched him go, the smile melting from his face, replaced by a look of pure, predatory eyes. The trap had been baited. Now, it was time to spring it. The shift was subtle at first. A few sideways glances from his peers. Conversations that would stop abruptly when he entered a room. Then came the whispers. The colonel's internal investigation was in psychological warfare. He didn't confront Bilal, he methodically poisoned the well around him. A forged communication log appeared, showing encrypted messages sent from Bilal's terminal to an unknown foreign IP address. A large sum of money, planted by the colonel's loyal adjutant, was discovered hidden in Bilal's footlocker. Rumors were seeded that Bilal was disgruntled, that he had been passed over for a promotion, that he was selling sensitive intel to the enemy across the border. Within a week, Bilal's world had been turned inside out. He went from being a respected specialist to a pariah. The very man he had tried to protect now looked at him with suspicion and contempt. He was a traitor. The accusation was a poison that seeped into everything, isolating him completely. Colonel Khan played his part to perfection, feigning deep disappointment. He would talk to other officers, his voice filled with sorrow, about how even the brightest can fall, and how this betrayal caught him to the core. The formal accusation came on a Tuesday. Military police arrived at his barracks. He was stripped of his rank insignia in front of his entire unit, the thread staring with a sound that ripped his soul apart. They marched him to a small, windowless storage room that was to be his cell. The heavy steel door clanged shut, the sound echoing the finality of his damnation. He was alone, trapped in a nightmare woven by the very man he had looked up to. Despair was a physical thing, a crashing weight that stole the air from his lungs. He was a fly caught in a spider's web, and the spider was now slowly, patiently, wrapping him in silk. Only one person did not shun him. Every evening, she would bring him his meal tray. The guards would let her through, seeing her as a harmless old woman. She would place the tray of and roti on the floor, her movements slow and deliberate. She never said much. But her presence was a strange, silent anchor in his swirling vortex of fear. One evening, as he sat slumped against the cold wall, refusing to eat, she spoke. Her voice was a soft whisper. "Beta," she said, using the affectionate term for a son. "The night is darkest just before the dawn. Do not let them break your faith." "Patience." Bilal looked up at her, his eyes hollow. "Faith," he scoffed, a bitter laugh escaping his lips. "Faith in what?" "In justice." "There is no justice here. Only the Colonel's word." She looked at him, her gaze unwavering. "Not his justice, beta. Allah's justice. It has a way of arriving unannounced." He turned away, dismissing her words as the simple platitudes of a kind but naive old woman. He had no idea he was speaking to the storm itself, gathering its strength just beyond the horizon. Colonel Khan knew that even when he could rig, was too risky. Bilal was smart. He might say something, plant a seed of doubt. A loose end was a dangerous thing. No, the problem of Bilal Ahmed needed a permanent solution. A solution that the mountains themselves would provide. He looked at the weather forecast. A blizzard was predicted for the end of the week. A monstrous wind. Perfect. He summoned his adjutant, a man whose loyalty was bought and paid for. The plan was simple, brutal, and clean. They would stage a prisoner transfer to a facility down south. The transfer would happen at the height of the storm. In the chaos of the blinding snow and howling wind, the prisoner would make a desperate attempt to escape. And he would be shot. Tragically. Case closed. A traitor meeting a traitor's end. The paperwork was already being prepared. The night of the storm arrived, and it was worse than predicted. The world outside the small slit in Bilal's cell door was a roaring vortex of white. The wind howled like a banshee, shaking the very foundations of the fortress. Two guards, their faces grim and muffled by scarves, unlocked his door. "On your feet, traitor. You're being transferred." Bilal's blood ran cold. Transferred? In this? He knew. This wasn't a transfer. This was an execution. A cold, stark terror seized him. He was going to die here, his name forever stained with the filth of treason, his body buried under a nameless snowdrift. They shackled his hands and feet and dragged him out into the maelstrom. The wind hit him like a physical blow, stealing his breath and driving ice crystals into his skin like 1,000 tiny needles. He could barely see 10 feet in front of him. This was it. The end of his life, a short, pointless story of a fool who tried to fight a mountain. He stumbled forward, a dead man walking, his heart a leaden lump of despair in his chest. He thought of his mother in their small village in Punjab, waiting for a letter that would never come. A single, hot tear froze on his cheek. In that moment of absolute hopelessness, he finally understood. Words about faith, they were just empty air, swallowed by the storm. They were halfway across the main yard, a expanse of white, heading towards a waiting armored vehicle whose engine was a low growl against the wind's shriek. The colonel's adjutant was there, overseeing the operation, his face tight with grim purpose. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the swirling snow, blocking their path. It was She wasn't carrying a tea tray. She was just standing there. Her thin shawl whipped around her, but she stood as if rooted to the frozen ground, a small, frail obstacle against the storm and the armed men. The adjutant barked, his voice sharp with irritation. "Get out of the way. This is official business." She didn't move. She didn't even look at him. Her eyes were fixed on Bilal, and for the first time, he saw not pity in them, but something else. A fire. A furnace of glacial intensity. Colonel Khan, watching from the warmth of his office window, saw the delay and grew furious. He strode out into the storm, his greatcoat billowing around him like a cape. "What is the meaning of this?" I gave a direct order. "Get this senile old woman out of my sight," he bellowed, his voice cutting through the wind. He grabbed her arm, intending to shove her aside. And then, everything changed. Bibi looked up at him. The stoop in her back was gone. She stood ramrod straight, and she seemed to grow in stature, the years falling away from her like a discarded cloak. Her voice, when she spoke, was no longer the soft, deferential whisper of a servant. It was low, cold, and resonant with an authority that stamped the men to silence. "Colonel Rashid Khan," she said, each word a chip of ice. "You have forgotten the motto of the 3rd Commando Battalion. Duty and to death. I was the one who wrote it." The colonel froze, his hand still on her arm. His face, a mask of arrogant fury a second ago, began to crumble. Confusion warred with a dawning, sickening dread. How could this cleaning woman possibly know that? It was classified regimental history. She shrugged off his hand as if it were a piece of lint. From a hidden pocket in her simple, she pulled out an old, scored Setite model no longer in official service but known to be untraceable. With steady, deliberate fingers, she dialed a number from memory. She put the phone to her ear, her eyes never leaving the colonel's. "Command post," she said, her voice now transformed. It was the voice of command. The voice of power. The voice that had sent men into battle and brought them home. "This is Major General Ibrahim Shaheen." A wave of shock, so profound it was almost visible, rippled through the small group. Shaheen. The Eagle. A name spoken only in whispers, a legend from the intelligence community. A ghost. The architect of some of the country's most daring covert operations, a woman who had retired in absolute anonymity over a decade ago. The colonel's face collapsed. The blood drained from it, leaving a pasty, terrified mask. His jaw hung slack. His eyes widened in sheer, unadulterated horror. He wasn't looking at a cleaning lady. He was looking at his judge, jury, and executioner. "Yes," continued into the phone, her gaze still locked on the terrified colonel. "I am invoking Protocol Jina. Effective immediately. Authorization code. You have my position. Acknowledge." There was a brief pause. Then, she nodded. "ETA 5 minutes. Shaheen out." She ended the call and slipped the phone back into her pocket. The silence that followed was more deafening than the raging storm. In that moment, Colonel Rashid Khan understood. He hadn't just made a mistake. He had committed career suicide. He had threatened the life of a national hero. Before anyone could process the cataclysmic shift in reality, a new sound caught through the howl of the blizzard. It was a deep, rhythmic that grew louder with terrifying speed. It was the sound of helicopter rotors, but it was unlike the transport choppers that usually serviced the base. This was the sound of a predator. Through the swirling snow, a shape sleek, dark gunship, Mi-17 from the Special Service Group, the elite SSG commandos. It hovered over the yard, its searchlight cutting a brilliant white cone through the darkness, illuminating the scene like a divine judgment. The helicopter didn't land. Ropes snaked down from its belly, and in seconds, 4 figures in black combat gear rappelled to the ground with fluid, deadly efficiency. They move with the cold energy of leopards, their weapons held at a low ready. They ignored Colonel Khan completely. Their leader, a captain with eyes, strode directly to Bibi and snapped to the most rigid salute the colonel had ever seen. Major General, ma'am. Alpha team at your command. Nodded, the fire in her eyes now a calm, controlled flame. Captain, place Colonel Rashid Khan and his adjutant and an immediate arrest. The charge is high treason and conspiracy to endanger the lives of serving soldiers. The evidence is on its way to GHQ. You will find the stolen equipment in a hidden container at grid reference. She rattled off a precise set of coordinates from memory. And the fabricated evidence against Ahmed in the colonel's personal safe. Secure this entire base. No van in or out without my express permission. Yes, ma'am. The SSG team moved. There was no argument, no resistance. The colonel's authority had evaporated in an instant. He stood there, a hollow man in an expensive coat, as his own men, and then the orders of an SSG captain placed him in restraints. His face was a canvas of disbelief and ruin. He had been the king of this mountain, and in the space of 5 minutes, he had been checkmated by the cleaning lady. Bilal watched, his mind struggling to comprehend the impossible scene playing out before him. The shackles on his wrists and ankles suddenly felt absurd. The SSG captain personally unlocked them. Apologies for your treatment, the captain said, his voice respectful. Bilal could only nod, speechless. Major General over to him. The wind still whipped around them, but she seemed to command it, to exist in a pocket of calm. I am sorry I let it go this far, Bilal, she said, her voice softening again, regaining some of the hinu. But I had to see how deep the rot went. I had to be sure. You're a Shaheen. Bilal whispered, the name feeling mythical on his tongue. She gave a small, weary smile. That was a long time ago. After I retired, I grew tired of the politics and the games in the capital. I wanted to see if the spirit of service was still alive on the front lines, in its purest form. So I came here. To watch. To listen. And to be a janitor. Her eyes met his, and he saw a profound respect in them. You, with your courage, with your refusal to stay silent even when it meant your own destruction, you reminded me what that spirit looks like. You are a true soldier of Pakistan. The storm broke by morning, leaving behind a world of pristine, silent white. But inside, the storm of justice had just begun. The SSG had taken complete control. Colonel Khan and his network of were confined, their reign of corruption and betrayal over. An investigative team, flown in on the first clear flight, was already uncovering a mountain of evidence. The real, military equipment was recovered, and the faulty replacements were documented. The fortress was being cleansed from the inside out. Bilal Ahmed was not just exonerated, he was hailed as a hero. He was formally reinstated, and a commendation for exceptional bravery and integrity was issued from the highest levels of army command. His name was cleared, polished to a brighter sheen than ever before. But more than the official accolades, it was the looks from his fellow soldiers that healed him. The suspicion was gone, replaced by awe and deep respect. They saw him not as a signalman, but as a guardian who had risked everything for them. Before she left, Major General met with Bilal one last time. She was no longer in her janitor's clothes, but in a simple, elegant civilian outfit, ready for her flight back to a life of quiet retirement. She looked at the young man, now standing tall and confident. "The strength of a nation, Bilal," she said, her voice carrying the weight of a lifetime of experience, "is not measured by its weapons, but by the character of its defendants. Never forget that. And never, ever underestimate the power of one person, in any station of life, who chooses to do the right thing." The story of what happened became a quiet legend within the army. A story of a corrupt colonel brought down not by a rival or an inquiry from on high, but by a young unwavering integrity and the watchful eye of a ghost. It served as a stark reminder that true authority doesn't come from a rank on your shoulder, but from the honor in your heart. It taught everyone a valuable lesson: the most dangerous enemies are often not across the border, but the ones who share your bread and wear the same flag on their sleeve. And that sometimes, the most powerful person in the room is the one nobody is looking at. What happened to Bilal? He was offered a commission, an officer's path. He accepted, vowing to become the kind of leader that Bibi would be proud of, a leader who listens, who protects, and who remembers that every soldier, no matter their rank, is the nation's sacred trust. This story isn't just about the military. It's about every office, every community, every place where power can corrupt. It's a testament to the fact that courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to act in spite of it. What would you have done if you were in Bilal's shoes? Would you have stayed silent, or would you have risked it all for what was right? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Your voice matters. If this story of courage, betrayal, and ultimate justice inspired you, please give this video a thumbs up, share it with your friends and family, and make sure you subscribe to our channel for more stories that remind us of the hero that lies within all of us. Thank you for watching.